Sana, for those kind words. Habari Gani, brothers and sisters. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It was a great deal of feeling that I'd be here tonight in Seattle. In spite of all the jokes I make about it, I have a long history with some of the people here in Seattle. For a long time, Zakiya here, I remember Zakiya had a very young person, a very young student, who came into our independent school in the 1960s. And out of that school, we lost 17 students who were her classmates, 17 young black brothers who were students of mine, Fred Hampton probably being the most famous one. So I stand in blood before you, and I take that very seriously. I'm a very feeling person. I have a very great deal of love for black people because unlike most blacks who you read about and hear about, I've never experienced all those negative things from black people. I've been extremely well loved throughout my life. I've never had all the things that happened to me that have happened to, that I read about happening to other black people. And so I've dedicated my life to just one objective, and that is to assist in the liberation of the minds of black people and therefore the liberation then of their bodies. That is my sole reason for being. And it is the only reason, of course, that I would appear before you tonight. And I would hope that we would have a chance to really understand one another. Most certainly I would say things that will alienate some of you because of your personal lifestyle. That is not my intent. I have no fight with black people. I never in my life have used words like Tom. I never in my life have used words like nigger. I'm not that type of person. I have one enemy, and that enemy is the white race. No other enemies do I have. And therefore I'm at total war with that enemy, the enemy who has for 362 years waged unrelenting war against my people. And I have no time to have internal conflicts. I do take issue with brothers because of their political position, but it's not personal. It's a political position. And so with that being a background, I'd like to say to you that the most important thing that has happened to me was left out of the introduction inadvertently. And that was the fact that I grew up. I was born and raised in an all-black town in Alabama. For the first 17 years of my life, I had all-black teachers, all-black role models, black people who loved me, who protected me, who raised me, who fed me, who nurtured me, and also who educated me. And I would like to say, as I say all the time, that there's a difference between education and training, and therefore the difference between education and training, I'm fortunate because I was educated by black people, and I was trained at the University of Chicago. Unfortunately, black people, that's part of the mental style process. Black people are more impressed with the fact that I was trained at the University of Chicago than the fact that I was educated by black people in Alabama. And with that, I'm going to take a sort of different tag with Mentacide tonight because, and I'm going to lay it in some ways that all of us can sort of understand, and although we may like, this will be published in about 3 weeks. In about 3 weeks, Third World Press will publish what I'm going to talk to you about tonight, and I'm just going to introduce it. And you'll have to get the publication from Third World Press, and it will be out here. I would also like to say to Karumo and all the other brothers and sisters who I worked with over the years that I really appreciate being here and being loved so by them. I mean, there have been many times I've been places which my weapon was not as good as it was tonight. And in fact, there was a time when I had to almost run out of the place. They were always stood tall and stood behind me. Tonight I'm going to talk about Mentacide, and I'll start by telling you one of the problems in talking about a theory. One of the most difficult tasks of a black scholar, one of the most difficult tasks of a black person who thinks, is to be able to analyze the influence of racism or racists on black behavior and attitudes, be able to do that analyzation, and at the same time escape the almost irresistible Western scholarship protected barrier. Western scholarship in the Western world, that is their protection. They have a barrier, and they call it scholarship. And it protects them so well that even when you begin to study racism, you end back up studying the victim, doing an analysis of their victims. That's what is happening. So there's no question that this analysis of the victim methodology has been a major scientific development of white scientists because it effectively leads away from the cause of our condition, which is white pathology. It leads you away from that once you get into it because the way the scholarship is set up. One of the results is that the position is usually taken that one should not even imply to the black masses our truly weak position for fear of immobilizing them. In other words, you shouldn't talk about all the conditions of blacks because you immobilize them, which are a condition which already exists. while others take the position that whites have power over blacks all. Now, this is due to the all-powerful but non-existent white concept of free will. Free will, which has us in all sort of trouble. All sort of trouble, this idea that you got free will. Namely, that people always have choices, and you have choices since you have free will. Therefore, you can be held responsible for your behavior. And that free will, of course, as I spoke to last night, that free will, what it leads to then, it leads to a great deal of negative behavior, and it leads to rugged individualism. Therefore, to give you a type of analogy, and I'm not trying to be humorous. I know many things I say are humorous, but I like to use analogies, as African people have done throughout history. Is that the analogy I have is that whites have us fighting over deck chairs on the Titanic. Got us fighting over deck chairs on the Titanic, while they have taken the lifeboats and gone. And some brothers and sisters want to argue on what class we're in. What class we're in. So we had a brother like Brother Wilson back at the University of Chicago, who was the head of the sociology department, as I said last night, who wrote this book, The Decline and Significance of Race. Race is declining in significance, now it's class and economics. And of course, the mere fact that the brother is married to a white girl means that race declines every night in significance, especially when they go to bed. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand me. I'm very aware of what happens when you expose the human personality to dangerous stimuli. I'm a very serious behavior scientist. I'm very aware of that. However, there comes a time when the risk of exposure is insignificant when compared to the alternative. And to paraphrase a type of mental health truth, which is a mental health truth, the greatest pathology in the world, the greatest sickness in the world, is for people to believe in something just because they wish it to be so. That's the greatest pathology you can have. For you to believe in something just because you wish it to be so. And that's what most of us are. For example, if you take suicide, let's deal with that for a minute, because that's what the publication will be about. And I want to use that just to deliver this. In the not too distant past, suicide in the black community was virtually non-existent. In fact, when our comedians were really comedians, they used to joke about it. How can a black commit suicide jumping out of a basement window? Things like that, you know. And so, you know, the fact that the black committed suicide by attacking the policeman's club with his head. Things like that, you know. Somebody in my town where I grew up, if somebody come up and talk about somebody kill himself, everybody be looking for who killed him. But there's a further understanding if you begin to do this analysis. One of the things I have to say right away, and then maybe this will give you some understanding of where I'm coming from. The most serious mistake you can make, along with that greatest pathology, the most serious mistake you can make is to try to use white definitions to try to define and understand black phenomena, black behavior. The most serious thing, to use white definitions. He who defines rules. If you accept my definition of the world, I will rule you. And so you see, look here, we're in this science lab. No question about it. Look here. See, since I've been in school, they don't even add more stuff to that table. The table wasn't hard enough as it is. Now they had something else they were talking about. Now, what they tell you, oh no, Dr. Wright, this is objective. This is objective. This is science. This is science. You know what science is? A group of white men and women getting in a room and say, this is the way the world is. If you disagree with us, we'll kill you or we'll flunk you. That's simple. That's simple. So this is no more objective than anything else in the world. This table up here is some science, and white people have gotten together and said, this is science. Here's a definition of this, here's a definition of that, here's that. And let me tell you about definitions. They do not have to correspond to any reality, as long as they are useful in understanding some phenomena. That's the whole thing about science. Science does not have to deal with reality. Does not have to deal with a reality. Astronomy cannot prove anything. No one's been out there and touched a star. No one can, but they can infer. And then once you accept that definition, then you have a science called astronomy. Brothers and sisters got astrology. What sign are you? I knew that was some reason we couldn't get along. They dropped that one on us. Astrology. What sign are you? And I had some students in the free school once to do a do a research. I want you all to get on the L, which is the subway. And I want you all to get on the L. And I want you all to where the blacks ride, because, you know, unlike you all, most of you have not been to Chicago and got into a cultural shock. Because we got block after block, mile after mile, and nothing but black folks. We got more black folks in 2 housing projects than you all got in the entire Northwest. I mean, so when I talk about black folks, I'm talking about black folks, you know. And we don't hear that. Who are we? Why are we here, you know? So I had them to get on the subway where all the blacks ride and pick up the newspapers and bring them back to class the exact way they picked them up on the air. The exact way they picked them up, bring them back to class. We're doing this research. Sure enough, every paper that they picked up on that subway, and I mean they picked them up, the papers were about 10, 15 cents. Every paper they picked up, it was either turned to Ann Landers or turned to the astrology page. Astrology page. So right every day, if you notice, watch this. Whenever we get papers, that's how serious people, that's how their Mentacide is programmed us. And Mentacide, as I told you, is defined, as the sister told you, is defined as the deliberate and systematic destruction of a group's mind, with the ultimate purpose being the extermination of that group. He who controls minds controls the hands. He who controls the brain controls behavior. Very simple. Nothing complex about that. So you have blacks, if you look on the paper, they'll turn straight past the front page, stop at Ann Landers, and then go to the astrology page, and then put the paper down. Put the paper down. And even men of you, I'm not serious here, carry on serious discussion about astrology. Now let's just deal with that Mentacide process. How can you deal with astrology when they admit that Julius Caesar decided to put a month in? You know, here they screwed it up so much that we got February, 28 days. And by the way, that's our month. They gave us the shortest month in the year. And I'm making a suggestion here tonight, and I hope you carry it on. Let us start having in January 1st, because I'm getting tired of traveling for 30 days every year. Let us start in January 1st, and very serious, having Black History Year and White History Month, White History Week. Seriously. Let's stop Black History Month. Let's stop it all together. It's time to stop the nonsense of this. Why should we study Black history 1 month out of a year and we black folks? That's Mentacide. You don't hear Italian month, history month. You don't hear Irish history month, Jewish history month. Number one, they ain't got no history. But anyway, you don't hear. Yes, they do. Let me stop here. Yes, they do have history. Yes, they do. It's bad, but they have it. Now, so when we look at suicide, for example, to show you about Mentacide, all the things they say that create and keep people, and we do have brothers and sisters committing suicide. I don't killing themselves, not committing suicide, killing themselves. There's a difference. I'm going to tell you about the difference, about the definition. All of the conditions that produce suicide in other people, that they say produce, that is the feelings of feeling helpless, the feelings of feeling hopelessness, the feeling of feeling powerless, all of those things which create problems for white community and create a situation where they commit suicide, for the black community was considered as part of our destiny. Believe it or not, for many years, until lately, blacks considered suffering as a way of life, not death. Suffering as a way of life, not death. You didn't kill yourself because you suffered. Hell, if we had that, most of us wouldn't be here. Think about it. How is it that in less than 20 years, the black community now has one of the highest suicide rates in the nation? I'll begin to explain that. And it was out of this cultural imperative, believe it or not, about suffering and how we dealt with suffering, that the blues developed and is now being stolen. And it revealed incomparable soul of black folks that the boy talked about. In fact, it should be noted that centuries before us, European scientists talked about existentialism. Centuries before it, blacks had accepted, unfortunately, what I told you. The whole definition of existentialism is this: to live is to suffer. And the ultimate test is the meaning that people find in that suffering, which dictates the way they live and die. So here we had, as black people, all of these years, we lived an existentialist existence according to the white scientists. Now, so before the 1960s, it would have been very difficult for blacks in the United States, in any community, even Seattle, to understand black suicide. Before the 1960s, what happened? Given this historical reality, the question must be raised is how could the people who in the worst of times endure can now reflect one of the highest suicide rates in the United States? Right away we began to get into some answers, and I'll tell you this. I label this paper lynching by any suicide, black suicide, lynching by any other name as being lynching. But when I talk about free will, which is part of that Mentacide, the concept of free will absolves whites of any responsibility for their victim's condition. In fact, whites have developed an envious effective defense mechanism called the guilt of the victim. It is so effective that we begin to accept our plight, and this is due to our religious upbringing, as being God's will. That is God's will that we suffer. It should be noted that when I talk about Mentacide, I'm talking about a worldwide phenomenon among black people. Everywhere you go, and you must ask yourself this as black people, there's some realities we must face. Why is it that everywhere you go and find whites and blacks in close proximity to each other, whites are on top? Whites are ruling. That question must be answered. Questions like that cannot be skated on. You can't tell me, oh, it just happens that way. It's just a function of history. Somewhere, if that was not an intent here, somewhere in the world you will find black folks oppressing whites. Somewhere in the world. Such is not the case. Not only where you find blacks, where you find blacks and anybody else, the blacks on the bottom. You have to begin to ask yourself why. Therefore, what I'm proposing, I want to explain to you now about Mentacide and how I'm going to try to prove here to you tonight, really for some of you the first time, how this first developed. Approximately, exactly 55 years ago. 55 years ago, a white professor of psychology at the University of Chicago proclaimed to the world this prophecy. Here's what he said, and I'm quoting him. Give me a dozen healthy infants, listen carefully. Give me a dozen healthy infants, well-formed, and here's what's important, and my own specified world to bring them up in, and I'll guarantee to take anyone at random and train him to become any type of specialist I might select. Doctor, lawyer, artist, merchant, chief, and yes, even a beggar man and a thief. Regardless of his talents, his penchants, his tendencies, his abilities, his vocation, and the race of his ancestors. In the quote. The man who made that statement was John B. Watson, a graduate of the University of Chicago and later a professor of psychology at the University of Chicago, and who started behaviorism. Most of you know about B.F. Skinner. John Watson started behaviorism at the University of Chicago, and that's what he said. Give me on my own world, my own specified world, and I will bring up a person anywhere where I would turn him into anything I want him to be. I'll give you some aside about Watson. What happened to Watson was that they came in and caught Watson on top of the desk in a compromising position with a female student, and usual things that goes on in universities, and tried to reprimand him, and he resigned and started J. Walter Thompson's advertising, which, as you know, became the world's largest advertising firm. Now, this properly called behavior modification is a highly complex science, which is underrated and generally ignored by black behavior scientists. Yet any black with a cursory knowledge of B.F. Skinner's experimental analysis of behavior, what it is, should recognize its potential danger to our community, where every institution is under the control of whites. That's what makes it so dangerous. The whites have their specified world. All of our life-sustaining institutions are under control of whites. And so therefore Skinner, who I consider one of the most dangerous white men alive, Skinner came up with these 8 words. Behavior is shaped and maintained by its consequences. Those are devastating words. Skinner talks here. That behavior is shaped and maintained by what happens, by its consequences. Skinner single-handedly wiped out the civil rights movement. I'm going to single-handedly theorize and wiped out the white. Because they finally realized that brothers and sisters' rhetoric was inconsistent with their behavior. And they realized that brothers and sisters' rhetoric could be altered by the consequences. By the consequences. So at first they were taking us real serious. We'll burn this place down. And they found out they could wipe that brother out by asking him how much. How much money you want? How much y'all want for the Black Studies program? How many airline tickets y'all want? And so that's strictly a Skinnerian thing. And they carried it much further. And out of that came Skinner articulated that it is possible to delude people in believing that they have the essence of life, namely, and that's where he wrote his book, Beyond Freedom and Dignity, which you should read. Because what Skinner talked about is that everything black, he talked about blacks in that, he wrote about blacks in that book. And he talked about in there that beyond freedom and dignity, that you can give people freedom and dignity, or concepts of freedom and dignity, and still control them. Still control them. And that's why he said beyond freedom and dignity. Give black folks freedom and dignity. They keep saying they want freedom, they want dignity. Give it to them and still control them. And so, why you cannot use traditional white techniques, because it assumes an inherent equality between blacks and whites. So let's go into some of the, and I always use, to show you clearly how Mentacide operates. I've used so many examples that many of you know. I'm going to try to think of some, I'm going to try to give some different ones now. Some I see right now. The top basketball teams right now in this country, DePaul, UCLA and all, Alabama, if you look at them, Alabama, UCLA, and DePaul, the first 7 or 8 starters on those teams are blacks. Black boys. Yet these are white schools, just like University of Washington here. White schools. The question must be asked, because this is Mentacide. Since 8 black boys out of 10 on the basketball team at a white school, what are the white boys doing? At a white school, what are the white boys doing? Tell me, we don't have 80% of the medical school student body. We don't have 80% of the law school student body. Why should we have 80% of the basketball team? That's Mentacide. They bring black students into these schools for many reasons. And they use them as you use cannon fodder and spit them out the same way. And that becomes Mentacide. They take our best brains, our potentially best brains, and through the Mentacide process. For example, University of Chicago accepted, one student in medical school last year, and they stated that they had accepted, one black student in the University of Chicago Medical School this last year, and they stated that they had accepted 10. We took those 10 students, names and all, and guess what we found? That Harvard, the University of Chicago, University of California, all of them had accepted the same 10 students. All of them accepted the same damn 10 students, knowing that those 10 students can't go everywhere. And so when you go up in that child, no, but see, Dr. Wright, since you're an alumni of this medical school, we took in 10 students. See, here's our letter. And you took those 10 and sent to Harvard. Say, send me your 10. And look down and the name same name. They accepted. And so that type of gentleman, that type of stuff is what I'm talking about in terms of Mentacide. Now, about the, I always use the example of Notre Dame about the basketball, and then to get us into what y'all like is the prettiest part about this. I saw Notre Dame play basketball once, and 5 black boys was on the team. You all know about basketball, fast breaks and all. And they were losing the game, so they did what Washington will not do. They put all the 5s out at one time. That's why Washington keeps losing. So Notre Dame's losing, and announced they're pro-Irish, and finally they put the 5 brothers in, they start winning. The brothers go down, and they go down to the other team, shoot a basket, 2 points down, shoot a basket. Notre Dame team grabs the ball. These 5 brothers start down the street, down the court, and the announcer went crazy. Here come the Irish, here come the Irish, here come the Irish. 5 black boys, 5 black boys. And that's indicative of how they got us. They have us identified in so many ways, in so many segments in the black community, that we're divided so many ways that the whole concept of unity, it keeps eluding us. Keeps eluding us. And so I'm going to say a couple of things that you all should. I rarely say slogans. But here's some slogans you should remember. I mean, here's some things you should remember all the time. If you know better, you should do better. It's very simple about Mentacide. I mean, you yourself have to understand what's happening to you. And you can't say, I've got free will. I have free will because, see, I can go pick my classes. I can do this, I can do that. That's not free will. You're programmed. You only have a certain number of classes to pick from anyway. You don't take no classes. You don't go out and make no class schedules. You can't pick the time those classes meet. I guarantee that. And that's why so many brothers and sisters are in trouble. This morning, these students had me up at 6 o'clock, after going to bed at 4. And I walked across the campus this morning at 8 o'clock, 8:30. I think we met one brother, and I started running and said, what the hell are you doing out here? I mean, these white students running over us. And I'm looking around, brothers and sisters, nobody on the campus. I mean, and I'm saying, what the hell, the black student? I know somebody's got 8 o'clock class. All y'all can have 12 o'clock classes. I mean, the other thing is about the problem. Let me first talk about the problem. The problem is very simple in terms of counteracting Mentacide. We need to develop, and if you read Cruz, that I did last night, we need to develop a social theory. That's what we need, a black social theory. A black social theory. We need to develop a black social theory because of an old African proverb. Social theory means it dictates the behavior and the direction of life. Everybody have everybody have their social theory. Every white group have their social theory. Italians have one social theory. Jews have another one. Irish have another, and that's what makes them Italian, Jews, and Irish. Is their social theory. You can't have, and we're around here believing we can have Jewish social theory, an Islam social theory, a Christian social theory. You can't do that. That's where the division comes. And so we must have a black social theory because the African proverb states, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. See, you don't know where you're going, take any road. And that's what we're doing. We don't know where the hell we're going, so we take any road. Just run down the street. And like if you don't know your way out of here, Malcolm forbid, just take any route. Like me, I don't know why the hell to get back to that hotel over there, somewhere on there. So if you all don't tell me I don't get a cab, I can start walking in any direction and got just as much chance of stumbling into it. In fact, Reverend Jackson, they put him around the country, Reverend Jesse Jackson, these signs on alcoholism. And this one sign he has, we might crawl to freedom, we might crawl, run, walk, but we will not stumble to freedom. I'm convinced that unless we do this, that's the very way we're going to get there, stumble into it. I mean, there ain't no other way. It's no other way. You just can't look for luck for stuff like this. You have to build a social theory. So you have to know where you're going. Some other things come because on Saturday I was dealing with the Black United Front. I testified in New York Saturday on the Black United Front national hearings on white violence against blacks. And as I pointed out, we're going to have to stop being on the defensive. My people had a saying where I grew up, if a rabbit carried a pistol, nobody would be rabbit hunting. I mean, look, seriously, think about it. Very few people be out there if a rabbit was shooting back at you. But there's some other things we must look. It was written by Lerone Bennett that history does not forgive those who lose their way. History does not forgive people who lose their way. And so all of this has to be tied up with Mentacide. And as I stated, and I keep stating, we have some 4 problems. 1, we're in a racist war. 2, everybody knows, every other race knows that but us. 3, every other race knows that race but us. And I'm getting ready to wipe out some people in here in a minute. Knows that race. And 4, we are anti-intellectual, anti-theoretical, and ahistorical. Those are the problems. We don't want to deal with developing a social theory. We want to act. And we want to act in some manner with somebody else's social theory. Well, let me give you some examples where I start now with the conflicts going, internal conflicts. There are brothers and sisters who want to do the class analysis, who want to talk to me about it's a class struggle. It's not race. And when you ask a very fundamental question, why is it that for 362 years, we are the only people who have been kept down because of their color in this country and in this world? How do you explain that? Not only that, Russia is not communist. Russia is not Marxist. Russia is nationalist. And the reason I know they're nationalists is because they are buying wheat from the United States. They're the biggest trader the United States has. Here they're selling each other computers and everything, and they want to tell me they're at war with each other. China is not Marxist. China is nationalist. Chinese people are going to look out first for Chinese people. They're crazy as hell if they did anything else. And yet we got only people who talk about let's give up our race is the one people nobody wants. The black race. That's Mentacide. So we're the only group of people who want to give up their race. It's not integration we've been seeking all these years. It's assimilation. We've been asking to assimilate. We're the only people who are willing to give up their race. Oh, I don't care what the color of the person is. I go by character. What's the character? I mean, what's going on? What's going on? And I said, like I said last night, and let me say this right now. When I talk about skin color, I'm not talking about no light-skinned blacks and dark-skinned blacks. I'm talking about white folks and black folks. Now, you want to prove that. If you want to prove that, I'm willing to do this trick when I come back to the other night. I'm willing to let every one of y'all parade through here, and I'll take out every white person, every black person in here. I don't have to know your politics. I don't have to know nothing about you. I'll pick out every black and every white in here tonight. But we go, oh no, how do you tell who's black and who's white? It's much better. What's their attitude? What's their philosophy? You know, anything except, how is it, as I said before, how is it a Japanese can tell the difference between a him and a Chinese? We can't tell the difference. All of them look alike, though. You know, they can tell the difference. Here you got them telling the difference between that, and we can't tell the difference between ourselves and whites. How are you going to tell the difference, Bobby? There are some of us who pass. If you can pass, you ain't black. No. Let's stop. If you want to have it, let's stop having a black student union. If everything can be black, we ain't got no color. We ain't got no race. So let's stop the jive. If everybody can be black, if black does not stop nowhere, then stop using the term. Because that's why we're in all this trouble. We refuse to put parameters on our race. Here, every white person in this country can tell you who's black and who's white, from the lowest child to the top. Yet we have problems with it. 362 years of oppressing us, of enslaving us, and we still resist that history. In fact, when the hostages came back, I still insist that what we should do is begin to wear signs saying, here we have been in here, these hostages 400 days. We've been held hostage for 362 years, and there are no negotiations going on for us. Nobody's negotiating. And then let me give you an idea of what some of our left-wing white comrades tell us. A Jewish communist will tell you, listen, you can't keep going back to the past. And they're still hunting Germans. Well, what happened to them 40 years ago? What happened to them 40 years ago? So it's all right for the Jews to go and kill Germans. But what happened to them 40 years ago? It's all right for them to demand that Germany pay them for what they did to 6 million of them, so-called, 40 years ago. But blacks don't even ask for being paid for 262 years, for 250 years of slave labor. We have never even asked them to pay us. Even we say, oh, they don't owe us nothing. The hell they don't. They owe us blood and nothing else. I mean, what other group of people? What other group? Listen, you gotta listen, Carol. You clap if you want to. But listen, what other group of people in the world you know like us? We're the most forgiving people in the world for other people, but if your sister wear your dress, you're a shooter. You will shoot her. If a brother step on your foot, you will shoot him. That's Mentacide. That's Mentacide. People keep asking, why do blacks kill blacks? Why do we treat each other so bad? Blacks kill blacks. Why? Because they've never been trained to kill whites. Therefore, it's outside their experience. You kill and you love people you've been trained to do that too. We have been trained, and we've been trained not to love black folks. We've been trained to kill black folks like everybody else. In the history of this country, as I said last night, in the history of this country, not one white person has ever been legally put to death, regardless of the crime they've committed against a black person. In the history of the country, not one white person has ever been legally executed, regardless of the crime they've committed against black. Yet thousands and thousands of black men and women have been killed for legal and illegal reasons of what they say that they did against whites. Somebody's got to begin to look at that. We can no longer afford to just sit here and begin to wish that things were better. They're not going to get better. They're going to get worse. Because for the first time, they have a method of exterminating people. Let me, before y'all get too far, that I'm thinking I'm going way out here, because the day our sister called me at the radio station after I got through, and she said, Doctor, I want to let you know that you said everything. I'm in tears for what you said. She said, but I want to let you know that I had a brother here, and he said that you were from Africa somewhere, and that you were crazy as hell, and I'm having a problem with that. You know, let me tell you, because we do wipe each other out. You see, some of you are going to go out here and say, hey, man, that brother's radical. That brother's a militant. See, the only people who are militants are us. Anytime you say he's militant, you talk about black folks. You don't ever hear of a militant Jew. You never hear of a militant Irish. Anytime you use the word militant, it means some fool been up talking. See, I said, well, again, we wipe each other out. He ain't got nothing to say. That's rhetoric. And then the other thing they pull on you, he's too emotional. So I'm supposed to stand up here and say, you know, 15 black children have been killed in Atlanta. 18 are missing, 3 more are missing. Now, isn't that terrible? We should look at that objectively. Say, Jews in there and Irish and all get on there and cry over everything. But when blacks somehow get up there, they say, oh, you must not be emotional. He's emotional. You must be scientific. Scientific. And so these are the processes of Mentacide. Let me give you some more that you relate to. There. And I'm going to talk about the race, show you how different. One of the problems we have is because of this. The reason I'm hitting on this much is because of images. And I'll talk more about this tomorrow with the black male and black female relationships, but if you look at our images, if you look at what is sexually attractive, and how we are bombarded every day, even in our own magazines, with images that simply contradicts the existence of 99% of the black sisters in existence. The images we are projected. Look at the way they put shows on TV. Look at the way when they put the advertisements on TV, the commercials. And now I'm going to talk about things you all think are very positive. Let me talk about a couple of them. Most certainly, most black folks thought The Wiz in both forms was positive. The Wiz was one of the most negative shows in existence. If for no other reason, the movie version, because Dorothy Silverstein played the lead, Diana Silverstein, who y'all call Diana Ross, played the lead. But in The Wiz, I'm going to take you all back through it to show you how Mentacide operates subconsciously. In The Wiz, there was this little black girl named Dorothy. I did not see the movie version. I refused to see dead people. And people like Diana Silverstein is dead. The Wiz show, how many of you saw it? So you have some frame of crime. In The Wiz, this young girl named Dorothy was blown away just like the Wheels of Oz. And she began to blow away from home, and she was trying to find her way back. And she came in contact with Evelina, the evil witch from the South or from somewhere. And when Evelina came out on the stage went completely dark. Black crows began to fly overhead. Everybody on the stage, including Evelina, was all in black. Remember, the stage is black. All in black. And she had her fist ball up. She came out a big, black, fat woman. That's what she did. And Dorothy, this little young black girl, killed her. And then we got to the good witch from the north or the east or wherever. And the lights, technicolor lights came on. 6 brothers on each side with fields, with their hairs in froze that looked like a fresh-cut lawn. 6 burly brothers. I'm about guarding her. And technicolor lights, and guess who it was? Lena Horne. Now that girl, that woman that Dorothy killed, was a spitting image of my grandmother. Almost all the women in my family look like that woman she killed, because that woman represents the black race. So does Lena Horne. But most certainly, why is it always that whenever you have with thick lips, whenever you have with short hair, they are placed in a negative light? Because they are the essence of our race. You might not want to deal with that, but we are a black race, people. We are a dark race. And everywhere you see darkness, it is put in a negative light. And so then even you no longer can relate to it. No matter how political you get, there's always that self-doubt. In 46 years of my life, I've never seen an ad that it would allow me to be darker. Every ad they got, every ad we see in the evidence is what? Bleaching cream. Get 3 times lighter. Natinola. 3 times lighter. Bleaching cream. Bleaching. That's what they got on the ad. That's why I show you how arrogant and how effective Mentacide is. And then even when you see our images begin to talk, then they become, especially our artists, they become human. Human. I'm not black. I'm human. My art transcends color. You know, can you imagine a Jewish actor saying my art transcends being Jewish? He wouldn't be an actor too much longer. He sure wouldn't work. That's for sure. But I'm saying to you, I'm giving you these examples of what Mentacide really is. Let's move on because time is fleeting. Let me give you just a couple other examples of this Mentacide. And like I said, tomorrow night I'll talk about the black men and black women, which is taking a radical different view of this. Let me give you some others. Another example of Mentacide is that in spite of the fact that President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert, who was Attorney General, approved the FBI placing surveillance of spying on Martin Luther King. That was started by John F. Kennedy and Robert Kennedy. In spite of that, in spite of now the Freedom of Information Act clearly shows us what we all said back in the 60s, that Kennedy and that the Kennedy was just as racist as George Wallace, and that Wallace was more honest. More honest. Black people still have in their homes pictures of John F. Kennedy and Robert Kennedy hanging on their wall, and usually they got Martin Luther King in the middle, so they're watching him from the grave. John F. Kennedy. And even that's Mentacide. That's a mental act. Another mental act is black people have in their walls their children to look at every day pictures of blonde-haired Jesus and Mary and Joseph and the 12 disciples. And without even thinking, how in the hell could white people come out of Egypt land? That shows you what you can do to the mind. Go to the mind. Go to any black church. And here are pictures of it. And some of them have tried to get hip. They want the best of power. They have painted that picture black. The same picture. Painted black. Still the same sharp nose. Same long hair. And they painted it black. That's Mentacide. And these are the type of things I am. Other types of Mentacide. We allow our enemies to teach our children and then wonder why we're in so much trouble. We consciously deliver our children to white teachers. Consciously. And say, teach them. Teach them. Teach our children. Can you imagine? And I always ask this question. Can you imagine the Jews allowing the Arabs to teach their children? Can you imagine the Germans allowing the Jews to teach their children? Even today, Jewish people do not marry Germans. Jews don't even buy Volkswagens. You ever seen a Jew driving a Volkswagen? I know somebody will say, yeah. Think about it. All I want you to do is start thinking, why are we so different? Here we are on the bottom. Why are we so different? And that began to explain it. That's Mentacide. And the whole process, for example, let me give you an example of this. About I want to just pick on the Catholics and all this, but I better say something about the Catholics. The Catholics is an interesting phenomenon. Being a black Catholic is an interesting phenomenon. First thing, if you stop to think about it, I guess you don't think in religion, you believe. It's difficult to talk to people who believe. But the fact that black people would get on their knees to kiss a white man's ring, Now that's just, even the most conservative black should think about that for a minute. I mean, to kneel on your knees and say this is an act of God, to kiss a white man's ring, and if he turns around, other parts of his anatomy, according to where the ring is. But let me tell you about the Catholics. Many of you are not old enough, but you can go back tonight and ask your parents and your grandparents. Ask them about Ethiopia. They will tell you about the Catholics, your grandparents and your parents. They are not political at all, but they remember Selassie. Selassie was a sacred person to your parents and your grandparents. According to how old they are, some of you are young. Your grandparents, you ask them about it, they don't talk about it. But Haile Selassie was a sacred figure to black folks. And in 1936, the Italians took and invaded Ethiopia with planes. The Ethiopians did not have guns, and we have pictures of the Pope Pius blessing those planes who was going to drop bombs on Ethiopian men, women, and children. And they also, Life magazine published pictures of black men and boys in Africa, in Ethiopia, throwing spears at airplanes, and they laughed about it. Throwing spears at airplanes. And they said we have no courage. That's Mentacide. And yet you're a Catholic. You're a Catholic. No, you don't know your history. And if you don't know your history, you die. And that's why they laugh at us. That's why they have so much contempt for us. Because no matter what they do to us, we still say accept us. We never try to look out for ourselves. We never say let's take our destiny in our own hands. Let's look out for ourselves. We're men and women. We're grown men and women. We're not boys and girls. We're not in this world playing games. Why is it so difficult for us to do that? Mentacide prohibits us from even thinking the idea. Just the idea. Do not even let us think why all of you so much different religion. I can start on this road and go down it. And every one of you will be a different religion. Why? Why? Not everyone. I'm talking about, well, why? Why is it? Why is this religion? What is it about this religion? That's where we must begin to question. It's very threatening to many of us. Last time I got up here in Seattle and said this, it was really a problem. But so we don't even want to discuss it. We don't even want to think about it. Don't give me no bad news. That's what the Evelina said. Don't bring me no bad news. I don't want to hear no bad news. You see, so let's go on. That too is Mentacide. Even if you look, one of the things we did, we took the TV shows for some black parents in Chicago. And we took these TV shows and we looked at the black shows and how many negativisms were in those black shows. And you'd be surprised in things like the Jeffersons and all the Good Times and all that stuff, how many negativisms were in it compared to anything positive at all. And in fact, the most healthiest relationship in a Jefferson is the interracial couple. She comes down and beat up on poor George. The maid beat up on George. Yeah, do you really believe a brother would take that from a maid? You gotta be crazy, but we laugh at it. We laugh at it. If you believe that, you believe you need my professional services after this meeting. That a brother would take that from a maid. Open her mouth and push him down. And he paying her. Now, brothers don't even take that from people they don't pay. Now, my point is very, very clear. My point is very clear. White people are psychopathic. They're psychopathic in nature, and their behavior reflects an underlying biologically transmitted proclivity, which is rooted deeply in their evolutionary history. All that means, all those words mean is that the white's behavior and attitude is genetically determined. Okay. They got a camera breaking. Okay, let me tell you what that means, because this becomes very important. What it means is this. If indeed, as many brothers and sisters believe, that racism is learned behavior, then it can be modified and changed by experience and by training or education. However, if you take the position that all of these years that they've been in contact with the black race, that it is genetically determined, then you have two options. Either you must neutralize it just like any other disease. You must neutralize it or you must destroy it. There's no other option. Nothing in the history of this, nothing in the history prepares us to believe or indicates to us that racism is not genetically determined. Everywhere we see whites, they have a hatred for black people. A hatred. An undying hatred. Now we have all sorts of proposals on what it is. Some take the position, see, even to show you Mentacide and what it can do, and show you even what it can do to us, and then I'm finished with this part of it. And we'll start taking questions, so y'all may want to ask questions. If you look to Africa, you go to Africa, and you see all of these big, huge statues, and they're in perfect condition except one thing. Guess what it is? That noses and mouths are knocked off. Even the great Sphinx. Who did it? Give me your history. Napoleon. Napoleon said, that nigger's laughing at me. Knock his nose or mouth off. The great Sphinx. Read your history. And guess what they have convinced us? They have convinced us that we're the most primitive race ever lived. And ask yourself one question. If we are so primitive, and we never had a culture, why are they digging in Africa rather than Europe? Okay. So the question is, why are they digging in? Why are they digging in Europe? If you really look at all the artifacts and everything else, you see, if you want to study African history, guess where you got to go? To Europe. You got to go to France and England. To those museums that show you finally about Mentacide and how it works. They have convinced themselves that King Tut is not black. King Tut is not black. So they brought King Tut here, and whites lined up for years to watch King Tut, trying somehow to identify with history. If there's such a great civilization and such a great race, where is their evidence? I'll tell you how they did it. They said that the Egyptians were not black. Now, they will not say they're white. See, they won't say they're white. And they won't even say they're brown. They will just say they're not black. See? And yet our spirituals even, that we didn't listen to, go down, Moses where? Way down where? In Egypt land. Wait, not way up. Way where? Down in Egypt land. Tell who? Pharaoh. I said, let my people go. And they weren't talking about, they were talking about us. That's our history book. The Bible, the Old Testament, is our history book. And our history book. And they took the history book, and that's what Mentacide, and turned it against us. How did they do it? How did they do it? They did it through the Bible. Through the Bible. Namely where? The book of Genesis. In the book of Genesis, where they said about Noah. Noah got drunk, according to the white interpretation. Noah got drunk, and his son Ham, while covering him up, observed him naked. And for that act, God, this is their interpretation of why we should be, why we are inferior, and why we should always be their servants. This is their interpretation. Y'all haven't heard it. This is it. They justify it by the Bible. They justify it by the Bible. See, the Ku Klux Klan is a religious organization. Y'all don't miss it. You know, they burn that cross, Nero, my God, to thee. Don't play them cheap. They are a religious organization. And so what they did is that they interpreted that Noah was drunk. Now, right away we run into a problem. Now, tell me something. Why would God, you all assuming there is a God. I have my own interpretation of that. But why would God curse Ham when it's Noah who got drunk? I mean, does that make any sense? Here Noah laid out flat, and Ham's covered, and I don't know how you cover somebody else without looking at him. But I mean, just showing you, it doesn't make no sense. Mentacide makes no sense. That's how effective it is. They can tell us anything. Anything. Not only that, so they said they would doom Ham for the rest of eternity, his descendants, to be servants of the servants of God. Now let's do another analysis. Let's say all that's true. That Ham saw his father naked. His father, God cursed Ham and said, okay, all your children, and your children are going to be servants. Now we got a problem, because there's something else happened, you know. God destroyed the world by water. And guess who was given responsibility for being on the ark? Noah. And Noah could only take what? His family and what? 2 animals. 2 of each animal. Now he raises an interesting question. Here's the question. Since Ham we know is black because even they say we're his descendants. Then since Noah was his father, and whites insist that we did not come from the same source, which I agree with them, that means Noah had to be what? Black. And since Noah was on the ark, the head of the ark, see? The head, the captain, the chief, the pilot. We know how we got here. Now I raise the question, how did everybody else get here since only animals were allowed on the ark? We might have found the answer to all of this stuff. If you want to play mind games, I'll play mind games with you. If you want to do that. See, that's why I say you cannot let other people define your existence. They'll do that every time. They'll always put you in an unflavorable light. You see what I'm talking about? We must look at everything, and the tragedy is every time they put something right, we believe it. Bobby, look. Here's the book. I mean, Bobby, look, and look here. Look at these footnotes. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. That's Mentacide. So we go on. Okay, let me give you a couple other type of things. And I'm giving you things you are not going to agree. I'm talking about. One was the treatment of what? Idiot men. President Idiot men. They convinced us that President Idiot men was the worst black that ever lived. And we lost one cardinal lesson. We forgot. And this is a law of mine, a right law. Y'all want a right law? Here's one. Anytime, all whites are against you, you're doing something right. You're doing something right. You're doing something right. And you never even heard a liberal white saying something good about idiot men. You know what you all forgot? What we forgot? We forgot idiot men making those white men carry him on their shoulders. We forgot that. We forgot idiot men did something no other African leader has ever done. Putting all the whites out of Uganda. And giving their jobs to black Americans. We forgot that. We forgot him making the ambassador from Britain kneel and come into his tent. We forgot all of that. So the middle apparatus went to work, and all those people that idiot men was supposed to have killed, they've never shown us one picture of them. They've never found the bodies. But they convinced us, and therefore they destroyed Uganda. They destroyed Uganda, one of the strongest African nations on the continent. The one who said that if Africa is to be free, black Americans will free it. Because blacks in the United States are the only blacks in the world who have been exposed to mass technology, who have been exposed to world government. That was Idi Amin. He had to be killed. He had to be in exile. He had to be. But anything they put in our newspapers, anything they put on TV, we will immediately believe is true. Look at the lies they tell. And you believe it. And now you don't even have to read any longer. Your children don't have to read. They interpret everything for us. Let's watch the 6 o'clock news. See what's happening. You will see what ain't happening. These are some of the things I'm telling you about are very simple. So your task, what is your task? Everybody asks, what should I do? You must begin to get into groups with each other. Begin to do this discussion. How is it that I can come to Seattle and you all come out and hear me, and yet you won't come out and talk to each other? Hey, what is that? I mean, what is it? What is it about us that we can't get together and get our own differences? Why is it that everybody can get us together but ourselves? Mentacide. Mentacide keeps us from trusting each other. Mentacide divides us. It's a planned program. And let me tell you something before I be under any illusions. Under any illusions. I have a great deal of respect for the white race. They look out for themselves. I ain't got no problem with that. Don't think no fools held us in check for no 362 years. No fools held this great race of ours down for no 300. They're smart people. Don't play them cheap. Don't play them cheap. We have a very formidable enemy here. And they're very amenable and very nice. How are you? Can I help you with your bag? How do that? Let's understand this. We're not dealing with no people who curse you out, who make you mad. On the contrary, they'll make you feel better. Bobby, they are better friends than my blacks. Yeah. That's Mentacide. And we must become that way. We must become civil. We must become, how are you? How are you doing? Thank you very much for opening this door. Can I help you with that? The objective is to win. We got to win. We're talking about winning now. We're not talking about, in a horse race, you can win, place, and show. Most blacks want to show. I want to win. I would say the other thing we must do, the whites have written our history in blood. Are writing our history in blood. We must at least write theirs in ink. You must begin to write. You must begin to write about your experiences and put them in your Bible. Put them in your books. Pass them on to your children. Say, pass this on. Pass this on. One thing we've found out, the oral tradition does not work. It gets distorted. We must write down what's happening to us. Because the history they're writing in this university has nothing to do with reality. Nothing to do with reality. And so, in ending, I would like to say, so we can take some questions, that I really appreciate the type of love you've shown me throughout the years. If you think that tonight I was showing you something that there is no hope, then that's not true. You misunderstood. It's just that the only way, I was telling the brothers tonight about, I rarely quote other people, because that's the problem. Every time you look up, brothers and sisters are quoting somebody else other than black people. But Fanon said it, and I like to quote Fanon because he is black, that there comes a time when silence is dishonest. When silence is dishonest. And we cannot remain silent any longer. I realize what's happening now around the country now with people like me and others is we're becoming isolated. There's a move on now to divide the black community along class levels. To tell black people that the problem is not race, it's class. That those bourgeois blacks up there have more in common with whites than they have with you at the bottom. And it's a thing that we're going to have to deal with. We cannot ignore it any longer. Books are being written by it. And it's going to especially affect the black student, because the black student is a paradox. The black student finds himself on a college campus where he is being trained to be a professional. And the strange thing about it is the very ones who give you the class analysis, guess who they quote? They quote people like Castro, who is a doctor. Che Guevara, who's a medical doctor. Marx, who was a German Jew, an intellectual, a PhD. Lenin, German Jew, intellectual, PhD. Ho Chi Minh, who was a school teacher, and have nothing good to say about a black professional. Won't quote a black professional at all about nothing. And so our black students are being bombarded with this, and our best minds are being wiped out because they cannot see the relevancy of being trained at the University of Washington. University of Washington will train you. They will not educate you. They will train you, and we need that training. But we must be educated with each other through seminars like this. We must educate ourselves. They are not fools. Why should they educate us to destroy them? Educated people are dangerous people. You cannot enslave uneducated people. That's why the Germans will never be enslaved. That's why even the Jews will never be enslaved, contrary to what they talk about. You're not going to enslave the Jews. You're not going to enslave the Japanese. That's out of the question, because they have a national will. Not only do they have a national will, they have a national intelligence. And you would never enslave them. Thinking people, educated people are always plotting while you sleep on how to get out, on how to kill you. Only uneducated people, only trained people accept their fate as being God's will. There's a better life after death. In suffering there's redemption. That's Mentacide. And so we must begin to teach ourselves, even if you don't like each other. And we must make a pact here tonight. A pact. Say, okay, brother, how far can I go with you? Let's see what we agree on, not what we disagree on. What do we agree on? What do we agree on? See, but we don't start there. We just start on what we disagree on. I don't like your analysis, man. No, did you agree on anything I said? I don't like your analysis. I don't like you. Those are the facts. And then, as I was saying, I really appreciate this. And I'd like to leave with this word here. Our black mission is very clear. We are men and women of destiny. We are. And our task is to develop a social theory. That's our task. To develop a social theory which will liberate the minds and bodies of our people. We must take an unequivocal position that if the black race is to perish, the world must perish with us. We must take that position now. 30 million black people in this country must take that position. That if this world is to perish, that if we are to perish, the world is going to perish with us. We're not going to be Indians. We ain't going out like they went out. No, somebody's going to pay a price. The other thing we must do, and this becomes tricky, because here's where you lose a lot of people. This is my position, that blood debts must be paid in blood. Blood debts must be repaid in blood. Somebody must pay for 362 years. Somebody got to pay us for that. Somebody must pay for all the black generations that have died for no other reason they were black and are dying today. Somebody got to pay for that. Somebody got to pay for that. And all the sex and the money in the world will not pay for blood. I know this sounds, so there can't be too much of that. And what I would hope that we must, and it's not out of what people say out of hate, but for justice. Justice demand that we make them pay. Justice, it must be justice. There must be some justice for all the black generation who died for no other reason their skin was black. It is hope, I will hope, that my theory of Mentacide will assist in the further development of a black social theory. That this theory of Mentacide will lead us further towards a black social theory. And it will lead out of this whiteness of Eurocentric madness and lead us into the blackness of African salvation. A Lucia continua, a Simatachinda Bavishika. The struggle will continue, and we will conquer without a doubt. There's no question in my mind. Asante Sana.